There's a story that is told in the DRC, that is the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is very well known among Christians and definitely very well known among preacher circles. It's a story of a preacher who started a ministry and in no time had thousands and thousands of people in his church when he just started with him and his family. The ministry was so big, it was such a huge success that he understood and knew that he owed it all to God. And so he began to pray and saying, God, you have done so much through me. You have done so many wonders through me. I pray that I will be granted the privilege to see you face to face physically. He prayed this prayer for 6 months, and eventually one day as he was in his study praying, he heard a voice say, I have heard your prayer, and next Sunday at noon I will come and share a meal with you. And so the preacher on that Sunday left very early for church. He went, preached probably the quickest sermon he had ever preached, and returned home, and the kitchen was bustling with people. The house was full. Everybody was moving around as they prepared the food and readied the house. And then 11:59 came and there was a knock on the door. Went and opened the door. There was a little boy standing at the door and saying, I'm a little beggar boy that sits at the corner of that street over there, and I couldn't help but come to the door when I smelled the delicious aroma that was coming from your house and wondering if you could spare a piece of bread. To which the pastor said, I'm sorry, but you must return afterwards because we're expecting a very important visitor today. After he closed the door, about another 30 minutes went by, and there was yet another knock on the door, and he returned, opened the door. There was a woman standing there. She said, my children have not eaten in 3 days. Would you please be so kind as to share a small morsel? And again, the preacher said, I'm sorry, but we're expecting a very important visitor. He has to eat first before we can give to anyone else. So do you mind coming back later? Another half hour goes by, and there's yet another knock on the door. He opens the door, and it is an older gentleman, and it says, I have been traveling for a long time, and I have a long journey to go still. Would you please spare a plate before I continue on my journey? And the preacher says, I am sorry, but we are expecting someone very important, and he must eat first. And then came 2 o'clock, and 4 o'clock. And 6 p.m. and the preacher sent everybody home. He tore the party down, went into his chambers and began to pray. And as he knelt down, he went to open his mouth and complain to God. And before any word could come out, he heard a voice say, don't you dare. Did I not come to you 3 times today? And each time you turned me away. You see, today we are in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 1 and 2 are the verses that I want you to focus on. And the preacher speaking to this congregation, to this people, really the preacher speaking to us, says, let mutual love continue. And then he goes on to say, do not neglect to show kindness, to show hospitality to strangers. See, the preacher is calling us to live what I would like to call bold Christianity. Because, you see, he understands that we already have love for one another as Christians and that we show that to one another. He's saying that is great, but I want you to go beyond because you are capable of so much more. Christ has called you to so much more than just between yourselves. I am calling you to put yourselves on the line and show hospitality to those who might not otherwise receive it. You see, when you look at the word hospitality, its origins are from the word hostia, which also gives us the word hostility. So really, when you're showing hospitality, it simply means that you are opening yourself up for hostility. So no, we don't always show hospitality to people that we know, care for, or love. That is not hospitality. That is showing mutual love. Showing hospitality is taking in people we do not know and taking that risk, knowing full well that there is a possibility that we might be harmed in the process, because out of hospitality there is the word also hostility. And so when you show hospitality, there's a possibility you might be harmed, but there's also a possibility that the preacher says you might be entertaining angels. The preacher in the story I just told you could have entertained Jesus, and he was given 3 chances, but he didn't recognize Jesus when Jesus stood at the door. But Abraham saw strangers in Genesis 18, and he invited them in. He took them in, washed their feet, gave them food, and turns out it was God and 2 angels that were traveling with him. Barak entertained an angel. Gideon entertained an angel. So many ancient figures in the Hebrew scriptures, or as we call them, the Old Testament, entertained angels only by stopping and showing hospitality and kindness to strangers. As Christians, we are called to live out boldly our faith, because that is what Jesus did. He welcomed the outcasts, the untouchables, the least of these, the children. So I'm inviting all of us to make it a point to be more hospitable, to show hospitality to those, especially in this season, who don't get kindness from anywhere else, because that is what we are called to as a church. Live out your Christian faith boldly. Show hospitality to strangers. I'm taking the pledge myself, and I invite you to join me as we pledge to be more conscious of how we deal with strangers. So come on, let us get on the way.